memes are actually a wonderful way to talk about very difficult topics without having people put their walls up. Humor disarms us. Memes, to me, are a way to highlight some of the ridiculousness of our workspace, of relationships between departments, of how goals are set and how companies are writing us as employees, and bring some humor to it and make people not feel alone. Make them see that, hey, this relates to a bunch of other people. There's like emotion behind it that can only be expressed through picture and not words. And a bunch of people are feeling that emotion.
Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jason Knight, and on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking all about growth. Speaking of which, if you want to help me grow my podcast audience as well as your own product knowledge base, why not subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, where you can hit that notification bell and make sure you never miss another episode again. You can head over to onenightinproduct.com for more details and make sure to sign up to the newsletter. Oh, and don't forget to tell all your friends. Anyway, growth. Tonight's episode has it all, and then some. We talk all about the journey from traditional sales through product-led growth to product-led sales and some of the things you might need to change about your product and your team to get there. We talk about career growth, the importance of optionality, and the joys of solopreneurship. We also talk about growing on LinkedIn and whether memes are a valid way to get your message across or make you look like a clown. For all this and much more, stick with us on One Night in Product. So my guest tonight is the one, the only Elena Verna, who needs no introduction, but I'm going to try and give her one anyway. Elena started out wanting to be an actuary, but since embarked on a career where she looked to insure companies against mediocre growth rates and as a qualified statistician, making sure leaders leave nothing to chance as they scale their companies. Elena has a glittering career working in growth for some of the biggest names in tech before taking a leap into solopreneurship, education and her own newsletter, Elena's Growth Scoop, alongside all the memes in the world. She's since been tempted back to full-time work at Dropbox, presumably because she ran out of storage and it was the only way to get an upgrade. Hi, Elena. How are you tonight?
That was a hell of an intro. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. In your face, Lenny. No one does intros like me.
Yeah, this was more impressive than Lenny. I'll give you that one. Score
there
one,
you go.
you, 0 Lenny.
That's the quote. I'm sure he'll be laughing at me with all these listeners on the other side of the equation, but that's fine. Right. Elena, we've got so much to talk about tonight, and it's been a while to get this together, so I want to make sure that we get as much juice out of the lemon as possible. But I'm going to start with a really easy one. What are you up to these days?
I'm with Dropbox full-time at the moment, which was quite a bit of surprise for a lot of people, especially since I've been advertising solopreneurship and the benefits of solopreneurship for so long. But I'm still chugging along with my newsletter. It's challenging and demanding, but I really like actually doing it. I'm still doing my report courses, still doing advising, and having this big, fat, full-time job on the side.
How do you balance those things up then? Because, for example, when I'm busy, the first thing that drops to the side are things like newsletters and podcasts, because I've got stuff to do and I can't spend all the time on everything. Plus, I've got a family, as obviously you have as well. So how do you manage to effectively weigh those things up since you do have a full-time job?
I don't think it's the question of balance. I think it's just the question of daily prioritization. Most of the days, Dropbox absolutely consumes my life, and I'm not doing anything else. However, I do know that I am a better operator if I also do advising, just because it helps me pull out of the small little weeds and details and see a bigger picture. By being a strategic advisor for Superhuman, it helps me be a better operator at Dropbox. And Dropbox knows that I advise other companies as well. And they very much support me in that journey. With newsletter, that one's a little bit tougher because writing takes me a long time. Like if I had to write my own blog post, it would take me 8-10 hours probably to put something together that I'd be happy with. So I seek help. I hired a very wonderful editor who is helping me put my thoughts in writing. And I still do all of the final editing and all of the thoughts are still mine, but they are much more efficient at putting words on paper. So that shortcutted me quite a bit. When it comes to family, there's no such thing as balance at all. Just some days I have to give away to my kids and to my husband and to all of the family matters. And other days I have to go and travel and I have to be completely away. So I just take it one day at a time and I see what needs to be done as a priority today. And I go from there.
No, absolutely. Like applying product management principles to your life there by always prioritizing for impact, right? But yeah, I know I can't even imagine, like when I started out doing this stuff, I still had a full-time job and then did the podcast on the side. Now, obviously, as a solopreneur myself, I can go and spend some time, I can kind of choose my time to some extent, which obviously you could before. But yeah, I can't even imagine having like a high powered job at a big demanding company and at the same time doing those things. But you say you are still consulting. So are you consulting or advising with a bunch of different size of companies? Is it just with Superhuman? Like, how's your portfolio looking like that?
When I don't have a full-time position, I often have as many as 7 or 8 advising clients. And that's because the reason that it's capped at 8 is that's my limit to context switching. And I just cannot think about more than 8 problems deeply and meaningfully. Versus when I'm having a full-time job, at most I have one. So I drop everybody else and I just have one advising client. By the way, I've had at least one advising relationship for last 10 years of my career, whether I was solopreneur when I had normal, very much traditional full-time jobs before that. I always had a advising client on the side as well. This is something one of my managers taught me to really see more patterns in the field as opposed to just being completely consumed by one singular problem. So I very much enjoy advising. I love helping other companies grow. That's kind of a way for me to scale myself as opposed to just doing a deep vertical like learning in one business. So I like it. I always keep one advising client no matter what happens because I think it's just a wonderful way to continuously pushing yourself further.
Yeah, and it's like that idea about kind of getting lots of coverage of different types of problem as well, because, that's one of the things I love about it as well. This idea that like you're not just working for one company and just learning one company's problems, but you're kind of getting a lot of more signal from all these different types of places, which can, as you say, make you more helpful to one or the other. But it also strikes me that somewhere like Dropbox, which is obviously a big, long, established company, probably one of the OG product-led companies in, product-led growth companies, from way back in the day, and obviously super successful. It kind of strikes me that this company probably has a lot of different problems to some of the others that you've probably had to advise, and that there might even be kind of buckets of types of growth problems that different companies in different sort of scenarios have. So how do you see there being like main types of buckets of problems that companies have at different stages, or is every single problem or every single company basically completely different?
Yeah. So, first of all, on the personal level, I try to take companies and their problems where I already have an experience solving them, as opposed to going into companies right from the beginning, trying to solve a problem that I've never seen. So, to me, that helps to make sure that I have a very healthy traction right from the beginning, as opposed to stretching myself. So, I can acquire new problems in the future, obviously, at any given business. But I do think it's so important to accept new full-time roles or really any roles based on what you already know how to do as opposed to it being a stretch. In terms of Dropbox is an interesting story. It's a fairly, like you said, old company in tech standards. It's over 17 years old. And it's very much at the end of the first product market fit horizon with storage. And it's trying to find that very much second horizon, which is going into universal search. Glean is a really popular competitor that they're going up against with their product line that's new, that's called Dash. So I think it's a very interesting challenge because at that stage of the business, it's all about optimization and it's all about scaling and squeezing the most you can get out of the original product market fit while supporting and giving amplification to the new horizon that is being developed on the product side as well. So from growth perspective, growth teams have the most power during this stage because they are the biggest deliverables to the bottom line of the business because there's not really a lot of innovation still happening in the first horizon. A lot of the product innovation is in the second horizon. So growth team at that point is very much huge contributor to revenue targets, working side by sales to make sure that the revenue goals that are set for the business are being hit. It's very different compared to other stages of the businesses where, for example, right out of product market fit and earlier stages, growth is like a nice to have because you're still working very much on developing that solution for the problem that exists in the market. And growth honestly should not even exist at that point because entire core team should actually be working on growth initiatives and balancing it with core growth, with growth work versus on later stages. It's like the the tables turn a little bit in the other direction, and growth actually takes on most of the center stage. And core product team just starts to almost work more on deprecations or more on just scalability of the platform and the product, and some of the tweaks to the features because main functionality has already been built. So in Dropbox's case, growth is very much center of attention versus earlier in the company's core product is very much more center of attention.
Product managers listening to this thinking, oh, I want to go and work for that type of company or that type of company, kind of feels like, yeah, like you say, there's a bit of a spectrum depending, just responding to needs, right? But speaking of responding to needs, I remember you a little while back, you posted all about the benefits of solopreneurship and going out and advising and kind of getting away from full-time work. And it's obviously something that resonates with me because I've gone and done basically exactly the same thing, although in a slightly different area. What was it that attracted you to actually go back into full-time work? Like, you seem pretty passionate about not being in full-time work, and then all of a sudden, and I'm assuming it wasn't just that you wanted more storage space, like what was it that got you in?
Although that was helpful. More storage, free storage. Come
Yeah,
on,
no,
in our
one
day and age.
terabyte for free.
There you go, maybe more. But hey, yes, I was very much a happy solopreneur. By the way, solopreneurship, of how I define it, and how it's different from contracting or freelancing, is that I have multiple services that I offer, multiple SKUs, so to speak, that I offer to the market. Meaning, I don't just do advising, which I obviously do. I also offer workshops. I also offer courses. I also offer public speaking. I also do sometimes interim engagements or fractional engagements. So I have a pricing page, so to speak, with the different SKUs, and I'm able to sell and mix shift between the SKUs as I see fit to the market. However, the difference, like with the contracting, you only have one SKU, one service that you offer. That to me is the difference. And solopreneurship is very liberating because instead of just doing and working on the same problem over and over again, you can kind of design your work, your calendar in the way that you want to and really adjust it to your superpowers. So the reason I was really big proponent of a solopreneurship because it really amplified for me personally on my personal strengths of pattern matching. I love doing puzzles. I'm working right now on a 10,000 piece puzzle. Like, it gives me so much energy to connect the dots. And when I'm advising or doing a bunch of workshops and even doing public speaking, I have so many more inputs and data points of what's happening in the market, and it helps me connect the dots. And that gives me energy. I love it. And out of that, I come out with some frameworks and patterns that I share back to the world in order to make sure that people also see that. So they're not just completely pigeonholed into one perspective that they're observing in their full-time position. And the reason that I took full-time role is because of other belief that I have into career optionality. You should have as many options in front of you as possible and fit whichever option is right in your given lifestyle and your life stage. And for me, solopreneurship was wonderful. I actually moved across the country at that time. Everything was remote. It worked for me. I was able to uncover these opportunities and really enjoyed what I was doing. But then Dropbox came around and I started as an interim first. So it was a very short, predetermined engagement that I wanted to have with them. And they invited me to do full time, and I joined because I wanted to see more of those problems through. I didn't feel like I was done. And it was the right option for me at that time. And it felt right to join and be together with the team and to see through a couple of the next stages of growth. So to me, it was very much at the same time, just make a decision that is right for you and fight to have as many options as possible for you to make that right choice. So I felt very empowered that I wasn't having the thoughts like, oh, full time is my only option. No, it's the option I wanted to take at the moment. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back into solopreneurship at one point or next, because again, once that job runs its course, which it eventually will, every job eventually runs its course, I'll dip back into being a solopreneur and doing a whole bunch of other things. So to me, it's right place, right time, right opportunity. But being a solopreneur doesn't mean that you never take full-time roles. Being in the full-time shouldn't mean that you will never be a solopreneur. To me, it's just a rotating door that you just need to make decisions on whenever, whatever feels right at whichever stage in your life.
That point about kind of ownership and seeing things through, I think really resonates actually, this idea that one of the disadvantages of, solopreneurship or just contracting, just freelancing, whatever people want to call it. And obviously everyone's a fractional these days as well, is that kind of idea that you don't get to really own the things that you work on. Like, you're there for a bit, you give some help, maybe you're there for quite a while, but ultimately either you're seen as an outsider by the other people in the company because you obviously are a hired hand, or you feel like it internally anyway because you know that you're not going to be there for the long term, or that you're only there part-time, and that other people may end up taking the stuff that you started across the line. And for me, that's always been, I've always got to the end of every single, for example, fractional, kind of interim fractional gig as like, I could stay. And then sort of telling myself not to. Have you ever felt yourself, I mean, obviously with Dropbox, but with other gigs, you don't have to name names, but like sitting there at the end of it thinking, I want more? Or was it just Dropbox was the first one and then you took it?
Well, no. When I was interim head of marketing for Miro, they offered me full-time role too. And at first I declined. Then I'm like, maybe I actually want to do it. So I like was flip-flopping back and forth. But then because I was also helping them hire for my successor, they found an incredible marketing leader. And I'm like, yeah, I can't compare to them. This is the person that's actually going to be able to take them to the next level. So it was a hard pill to swallow to say, like, you know what, I am not the right leader for them long term, although I was the right leader for that period of time that they hired me on an interim basis to fix a very specific problem that they were experiencing at that moment. So I had a really hard time flip-flopping on that one. When I was at Amplitude as an interim, or when I was at Netlify as an interim, I had a lot more disciplined approach. I knew that I was going to only be there from 6 months to a year, because personally, I wanted to invest into other things like Reforge and my newsletter, and some workshops that I was doing and advising on the side. So I was very disciplined about that, and I didn't entertain any other conversations about it. With Dropbox, it was different. With Dropbox, the team was so amazing, and I clicked with them, and the problem was so familiar. I had very similar problem that I was solving at SurveyMonkey and even Miro to an extent. So I knew how to approach it, and I had a path forward to fix it. So it just felt right, and it felt like I was in the right place at the right time. So I was very excited at the opportunity when they broached the subject of maybe I should stay full time. So I don't know. I think it's different, again, based on each life stage of whether I was open to it or not. But don't get me wrong, I definitely have gone through the turbulence of should I or should I not, and may or may not have made the right decisions. Who knows?
We're all human, right?
Yeah,
But along
exactly.
your solopreneurship journey, you have developed quite a strong personal brand. Obviously, you talked earlier about Reforge. You've got your Substack. You're all over LinkedIn. I think you've got something like 130,000-ish followers at the moment. So like you're roaring off into distance. But do you feel in any way, as I have in the past, more constrained about what you can say when you've got a full-time job and you've got this big personal brand as well, whether or not people in the company like that, or whether they appreciate what you're saying, but do you feel constrained that, for example, your boss might look at it and go, well, what's Elena talking about? Or your colleagues might sit there and say, is she talking about me? Like, I've definitely had that in the past. Is that something that bothers you or has bothered you?
So first, I want to say that all of those LinkedIn followers or the brand that I have is not something that I ever set out to build. I wanted to share my insight, and I wanted to share some of the ridiculousness that's happening across our space. And my brand just kind of happens. So, like, my followers just kind of happened. It was almost like a lagging indicator, versus my primary objective was almost just to share more information to create more like liquidity in our marketplace of tech knowledge that is readily available to everybody, versus people that are actually acquiring it because they're like not sharing it very well. So that just kind of happened. I just want to like set the record straight. I never set out to build my brand. That was never an objective. And
I'm an
even to this,
influencer.
oh, I have a hard time hearing that word. I do not want to be an influencer. Thank you very much. I just want to help people, and I would definitely do not want to influence anything. I just want to be, I just want to be helpful. But with companies, and in terms of being active, having active social presence. So I post a bunch of memes on LinkedIn. Sometimes I make them. Sometimes I just find them. I still post a bunch of learnings. So with Dropbox, I was very clear. like, hey, I have this thing and I do it on the side. Are you okay with it? So I had a meeting with their comms team, and they're like, okay, here's the rules of what we're not okay if you post. So obviously no information that is private, because it's a public company. Like, they don't want to get in the hot water with investors or with the market. And I know that line very well. I will never cross that line. And I always ask just the comms team, like, hey, can I post this fact about Dropbox, or can I not post this fact about Dropbox? So I tread it very carefully, and I make sure that I do not cross it. I'm not even close to it at any given time. Number two, they also know that I have this, and they usually already like read through my writings and my posts, and they give me maybe some suggestions, like, hey, maybe stay away from these topics, it's a very sensitive issue for us as a company, or stay away from these topics. The rest of it, they just say, go, this is part of who you are, this is part of why we hired you, this is part of your like what comes with a package with you, so we're okay with it. So are there some red tapes that you should never cross when posting for social? Absolutely. However, the rest of it, just be sensitive. And sometimes I cross the line, and I get like head of HR ping to me and is like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't think that this would be interpreted this way. Like, my bad. Delete." Because sometimes like I don't even connect the dots myself, because it's not like I give it 10 hours of think every single time I put something out there. But the most of the time, 99% of the time, is totally fine, and they accept me for who I am. And in fact, have a bunch of LinkedIn. My posts get just constantly forwarded to me on Slack and Dropbox. Like, oh, I thought this was funny, or I thought this was so educational. This was so good. So it's like creates a way for me to connect with the team as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that one thing that I've seen, and maybe we're just working with different types of companies from time to time, but like you'll be working with someone and you'll post some very or fairly generic insight about the sales team, for example. I work with a lot of
Yeah.
sales-led companies, and of course, then they think, well, he's talking about us, and it's like, no, no,
I
no, that's just
know.
what that's just
And
what
I'm like,
all sales teams do.
I wasn't
Yeah, it's like,
talking about you. I know. I found out.
well, yeah, it's like it's no surprise that sales teams, for example, make feature requests like off the roadmap and stuff like that to win deals. Like that's something that every single sales team does. But of course, as soon as you say that, when you're working for a company with a sales team, they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, he's talking about that thing that I was talking about the other day." So, yeah,
I
I guess you
know
just need to be
people draw
careful.
parallels where there actually none exist. So, but you kind of get a feel for that. Like, I understand when, in any given company that I work with, what are the like their sensitive areas and the big pink elephants in
Yes.
the rooms. And just when I work with them, I stay away from those topics. That's how I learned just best. But that doesn't mean that I'm just going to shut down everything that I do just because I work with them. They have to take it as a package deal.
No, absolutely. I think it's just one of those things. And I've definitely seen some larger accounts and people that have gone on to get jobs that lasted suspiciously little time at those jobs as well. So I'm wondering if there's this kind of collision of worlds between quote unquote influencers, or at least content creators, and certain types of leaders, certain types of company, where they're sitting there thinking that they don't want any of that. They just want someone to come in and do the work. Like, do you feel that, like, so for example, there's a lot of people out there these days, and I'm sure you get this, I get this a lot. People come to me, they say, hey, I really want to build my personal brand. I want to go and be, either I want to go and be a contractor or a consultant or a solopreneur, whatever I want to be, or I just want to get a new job. It's a really tough market. I want to build my personal brand. Do you think that I should do that? And how do I do that? And I sometimes say to them, well, actually, maybe don't do that, because actually certain types of people that might be hiring you might look at you and think twice. Like, do you think that's fair? Or do you think there's always a way to position it as you have where it's not really going to be a problem?
So I think if you go out there to try to build your personal brand, it's going to come off more sleazy and more um, almost vain, compared to if you go out there with a more specific goal of, I either want to share my knowledge because it will help me create top of the funnel for the business that I'm trying to build. And brand is just going to be a side effect that is going to be created as a result of it. So to anybody who's looking to say, I want to build my personal brand, my always question is why? Do you want to bet on yourself? Because once you build that personal brand, you need to maintain it. Once you cast a wider circle across a bunch of more people, you get more weirdos cut in that net. And like you have to like deal with like those bizarre
Like me.
interactions with. No, not you, Jason. Come on, don't put yourself down. But my point is that personal brand needs to be more of a lagging indicator of an actual North Star that you need to do. So what
Yeah.
my North Star was is, yeah, I wanted to share, like, I really want to democratize knowledge. That has really been my mission and my passion since I've been in tech, because I see how many problems people are solving over and over again and making the same mistakes over and over again. And we'd just be so much farther along as an industry if more people shared what they've learned and the mistakes that they've made and the knowledge that they've acquired. But second of all, I needed more pipeline for my solopreneurship business. And I needed to have more founders know about me and what I talk about and what I preach, and wanting to hire me as an advisor or do a workshop with me, or hire me as an interim leader, because I no longer had a big company brand behind me. So, like, when you have a full time job, you have that company's brand, like, it amplifies your brand. Like, oh, it's Elena with Dropbox. Like, that's how you get introduced all the time. So when I went as a solo, all of a sudden I didn't have that Elena with what? There was no Elena with anything. So I needed for people to recognize my name as Elena Verna and what I stand for and what I have to offer to the market without that backing of a really big logo behind me. So I went to it with more of, I'm going to share as many insights I can have. And as a result, I'm going to help me qualify and build top of the funnel for me for the things that I want to engage as a solopreneur. So it was very much a side benefit. And I don't even know if it's a benefit. I wish I didn't have a personal brand to begin with, but it was a lagging indicator of me being able to build successful top of the funnel for my solopreneurship business, not anything else. So don't build brand. Please don't build your own brand. Uh, it's not a good way to advance your career at all.
No, it's a fool's game. And I often say to people, kind of echoing some of your points, like, if you're trying to start now, then it's already too late, because it takes a long time to build up, right? Like, I mean, I started podcasting and doing some
Years,
of the stuff that I exactly
years.
took me. I had a full-time job when I started doing this stuff. I didn't need any of that stuff. I didn't. It was just for me to have, exactly as you say, sort of share what I've seen, have a bit of fun doing it, and like, if you're going to start, like, if you're going for a job hunt now and you're now starting to try and build your personal brand, then, it's going to take a little bit. And I see a lot of people trying to do it and not getting a lot of engagement and getting frustrated with it. But that relationship with LinkedIn, though, like, you talked about it just then, or you touched on it, and it's something that you and I chatted about a while ago, just kind of randomly, this idea that back then, can't even remember when this was specifically, but you had probably 40, 50, 60,000 followers at the time or something like that. And you said that your relationship with LinkedIn kind of changed a little bit after you got past about that 40K mark. And I'm interested, like, now that you're way past that, again, like, you've multiplied that by 3 minimum, like, what's your relationship with LinkedIn these days? You kind of touched that you wish you didn't have it to some extent, but, like, how do you feel about this whole thing?
So I first would say that LinkedIn, just like any social media, is built to make you addicted to it. And it's built to really almost like get you caught up in impressions, into likes, into going viral. It's like almost this goal that we chase after. And I got caught up in that goal at some point too, until I had to check myself and say, like, why am I actually doing this? And I had to reel myself back of, I'm not going to compulsively check LinkedIn, and I'm going to try to create separation between church and state in some capacity between me and in social media. I think to me, at the early stages, when I started posting on LinkedIn, it was I wasn't looking to have a lot of likes. I just wanted to have a circle of people that related to the problems that I was facing, that I could have good discussions with. However, as my audience grew, it became lower intent in some capacity. And I
Yeah.
still have some people that I've never even met in real life that I really enjoy talking to and, like, interacting in the comments and sending messages back and forth. And that gives me still energy that I'm connecting to some people that uh, are working through the same issues as me. And, like, we lift each other up and we share the ideas and we probe each other. But on the other side, LinkedIn kind of became this thing that's just like, I throw it out there And like, I don't know, sometimes it goes crazy viral. Sometimes I get absolutely no engagement. And that like emotional roller coaster of trying to please the algorithm has like exhausted me to the point that I don't even really care about it anymore. But at the same time, it's weird because I have so many followers now that no matter what I post, we'll get 100 reactions, no matter what, which is like stupid even because there's no quality bar anymore because like network effects have taken place. And they're just like, I have too many followers in the first place. So I don't know. I sometimes feel very dirty about LinkedIn because I'm like, I don't know if this is like something that I even should continue doing. But then at the same time, sometimes I have these wonderful interactions with people and comments and DMs. And I'm like, this is why I do it. This is why like it helps me connect and feel together with people in the space. So I don't know. Jury's still out on my true feelings on LinkedIn, but I'm spending a lot more time on my newsletter right now.
Yep.
And not putting a lot more energy there because that's feel like a more meaningful way to express my learnings and to share it. And LinkedIn has become just more of an acquisition vehicle into my newsletter, and that's about it.
Yeah, just don't post any URLs to the newsletter in the post, otherwise that'll get swallowed up by the algorithm as well, right?
I actually don't think that's true. I've had plenty of URL links in my post that have gotten thousands of reactions. So I feel like
It's just the post that's the
algorithm is just
problem
a
then, like
tricky
other
one.
people's posts are the problem.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
another thing that you have done very well, and this is something that I've got somewhat of a following for as well in my circle, different type of content, but like we're both fond of a meme or two. You talked about it earlier. And, posting our spicy opinions and trash talking different parts of
Oh,
product
I
or
love
product
trash
marketing with
talking. I
different
love
memes.
trash talking.
It's brilliant. And I think that one thing that both of us bring to the table and again, in very different kind of topics, like I remember when we both posted our kind of year in memes or something, and like yours and mine were very different in topic, but obviously still fundamentally, kind of the same memes. But sometimes I feel a little bit, and especially as someone that's trying to go out and get work, obviously, and find clients, that maybe I'll look a little bit bad. That maybe people are just going to think I'm a bit of a clown if they start to just see all this stuff on my post or my wall or whatever you call it on LinkedIn. Have you ever been worried that people might not take you as seriously if they see you sort of shit posting and putting memes up and kind of going for the lols? Or do you think that elenaverna.com has got such cachet now that you can pretty much post anything, as you say?
So I think it's a balance between still posting meaningful content and memes. Like you can't go all memes. That's one. Number two, I think memes are actually a wonderful way to talk about very difficult topics without having people put their walls up. And
100%.
like humor disarms us. Humor makes us uh, more willing to accept hard truths. So to me, it's actually memes. Yeah, laughs for sure, but memes to me are a way to highlight some of the ridiculousness of our workspace, of relationships between departments, of how goals are set and how companies are writing us as employees, and bring some humor to it and make people not feel alone. Make them see that, hey, this relates to a bunch of other people. There's like emotion behind it that can only be expressed through picture and not words. And a bunch of people are feeling that emotion. So if some people think that this is like, oh, this is just a clown, like, and I don't want to hire that clown, I'm like, then you don't understand humor, and I don't want to work with you because humor is very powerful method of communication between humans. Versus people that get that humor, uh, they they're not going to even blink twice at the type of memes that I post. So I definitely should there be like some imaginary line that you do not cross with memes? Probably, like they can't just be flat out rude, but if they're cleverly done and they invoke that emotion that people can relate to, I think it's a very, very powerful tool for communication, much more than any written content can ever do. And I only want to work with the companies that have people with them that understand that emotion and that also can relate to that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I might have gone too far when I posted 5 things that the human centipede has taught me about product management, which actually got me featured on LinkedIn Lunatics as if they thought it was serious. But I guess the lesson to take away from that is if people can't tell if you're serious, then it's probably as bad as if you are being serious, right? Like it's sort of like the
I do
parody is
love
so good that
Yeah, I do love my LinkedIn lunatics on Reddit. I think they're super funny. I love that subreddit. So I think it depends. It depends, and obviously sometimes if you want to work for maybe certain industries in healthcare and government or in some regulated sector, then yeah, maybe memes are not the best way. But for me, I'm in the productivity category. Who cares? Like
yeah.
I most of the time when I'm on Slack and I'm communicating with a team, I communicate them with Giphies anyways because writing is boring if I can send like a Giphy as a response to my team anyway. So I don't know. It all depends on the personality and the type of company you work with, I think.
Your mileage may vary.
Yes, your mileage may vary.
But speaking of content work, a lot of your work has been around obviously growth, but product-led growth is a big topic, product-led sales. Now, I generally work with, I think I mentioned earlier, with like very sales-led B2B product companies selling into the enterprise, all across the spectrum of kind of sales maturity or sales malfeasance, depending on the companies. And probably everyone listening to this will already know like about all the growth topics you talk about. They probably will follow you all already. But if you were to try to explain product-led growth in a nutshell, as if to a curious child, how would you explain that?
So product-led growth slightly means different things in terms of consumer industry versus B2B industry. For consumer industry, there's no other thing but product-led growth. Because for consumer, you specifically immediately go directly to consumer, whether you're a software product, whether you're hard goods and services product. And your user is your buyer, and you have to offer incredible self-serve experiences for them to do it because very few consumer products can even afford a sales team because their price points are so low. So that is where product-led growth has existed on consumer forever and ever and ever. And they invented product-led growth. So let's not fool ourselves that we in B2B made it happen. We didn't. We learned it from consumer and
You
we
made it happen,
rebranded it.
Elena. You made it
No,
happen.
we rebranded it from consumer. How about that? In B2B, there's a slightly different nuance because the user is often different than the buyer. So your IT or your VP or your CEO buys the product as an enterprise buyer. But then oftentimes users of the product are different. They're actually employees. So in B2B, we've always had, from the inception on B2B, sales-led approaches. Let us go find that decision maker, that buyer, sell them the product, and then they just push it down into their employees and use it. And that's a top-down sales, which is a wonderful growth motion, very powerful, still live and kicking to this day, not going to go away anytime soon until we lose some sort of
Oh, yeah.
hierarchies or IT administration in our companies, which is also not going away. Now, product-led growth in B2B is a fairly new, I would say less than 10 years old in terms of when it started being more popularized. And it's instead of going after enterprise buyer, you actually go after end user first. And you acquire a user, you engage them with the product, and then it starts to spread or take a bigger hold inside the account that it gets all the way to enterprise buyer, and then it gets upsold through sales. So sales is more of a destination, or enterprise sales is more of a destination, not a starting point. Starting point is that end user and self-serve experience. And that is product-led growth, that you go after employee and the end user, not an enterprise buyer right from the start. And it really started becoming more popular because a lot of end users that were forced to use these top-down solutions that were purchased by their companies revolted against how bad they were. They were a lot of times unusable. And just because they had a checklist of like, yeah, we solved this problem or we have this feature, end users couldn't solve the problem or the feature was just unusable from their perspective. So they went out and they started looking for alternatives themselves because they still needed to perform the job. And companies started noticing it and they started providing options for end users to go and engage with something self-serve without a big enterprise contract at the top. And that's what spurred PLG, product-led growth, really introduction into B2B, is that unusability of sales top-down services and solutions that were pushed on top of these enterprise buyers and propagated through the companies. Because tell you this much, if those top-down sales companies provided incredibly intuitive, self-serve products that were pushed down on employees, PLG would have never existed in the first place.
Yeah, that's the mic drop right there, right? But you touched on it slightly there, this idea of eventually going up to the salespeople, which obviously then starts to sort of blend into product-led sales. And,
Mhm.
there's a lot of talk about product-led sales these days. Not all PLG is product-led sales, as obviously you know, but some of the talk about product-led sales is coming from you. You just mentioned it just then.
Absolutely.
But not all salespeople are going to understand specifically what that means, apart from that at some point they're going to get to sell to people, but they might think that they're going to be doing it all the same way. So if you bumped into one of these salespeople, I don't know, a friendly-looking salesperson at the President's Club party, how would you describe product-led sales to them in a nutshell?
Product-led sales is just a different way to create pipeline for sales. So instead of a marketing team generating cold pipeline through events or through content where this MQL is coming to you, you're going to need to educate this MQL of what your product is about. You're going to need to connect them to the solution, do a demo, do a full-blown sales cycle. In this case, this is such a different source for your pipeline. And the source of the pipeline comes from the account that you're interested in closing. Nobody has closed this account yet. There's already some self-serve usage that is happening in the account. So now you have some data to work with that you can throw towards enterprise buyer and get them hooked a lot better. Because instead of having a cold outreach to say, hey, we can solve these problems for you, you can say, hey, your company is already using us. Would you like to hear what else we can do for you or how more people can benefit from our solution? So you have a way in already, and you already have usage that happened in the business, in the account, in the self-serve way, and then you can take that usage and close your enterprise deal. So all product-led sales is just a different source for pipeline creation from sales perspective. That's all it is. It's not a competition channel. It's not trying to go away from your quota. It's just trying to land an end user when buyer is harder to land or a buyer is not available to be landed because they're not looking to solve the problem that your product actually solves at the moment. But you can start with end user, work up in usage, and then have an ability to corner that enterprise buyer into purchasing more.
So there's a lot of kind of internal champion building going on there, which is something, of course, that
Yeah.
sales methodologies are all, they all want to do that, right? But it also, as you were talking, I kind of had this idea in my head about that all sounds brilliant, but surely, and I'm thinking of some of the companies that I've worked with or for in the past, there are going to be some buyers, or kind of the economic buyers or the leadership of an organization that when they find out, because the salesperson goes and says, "Oh, hey, Elena, loads of your employees are using this new tool, and we think you should like buy a whole license for the whole organization." And like, what do you mean they're using this tool? And they kind of use it then as a way to shut it down. Like, is that
You
something that you
should rip
see?
it out. Oh my gosh. I have a story from Miro. I'm not going to name the company name, but all of us know it. And Miro just spread like a wildfire via self-serve in that company. And dozens and dozens of employees were using it. And we finally said, like, hey, sales, you should go talk to enterprise buyer for this account because it's a huge Fortune 1000 company. And our sales team went on it, and head of IT freaked the fuck out. He's like, how dare you? There's like, this is an information breach. This is a data breach. I did not authorize it. And he blocked our domain for
Wow.
internal use. He was pissed, pissed. So, I mean, those happen, unfortunately. They're not majority of cases. Most of the time, that's not the reaction that you get from IT. The reaction from the IT you get, oh, people are already using it because a lot of IT are really struggling with utilization of the products that they purchase and push down. So now they're like, oh my gosh, this is already happening. I can actually kill this contract, which will save me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can probably purchase this at the beginning for a lot lower, and utilization is already happening. So, like, check, check, check. And they're happy about it. But some companies do get very upset, uh, just to put nicely, about what happens when product-led growth is like being used against them almost when they didn't authorize the usage. And the only advice that I have there is that most of that happens in the larger companies that have a very well-established security and administration team. And when you're working with Fortune, I would say even 5,000 companies and accounts, your sales should just interject earlier before it gets too big and self-serve, because you're going to need to bring that IT buyer along with you, not like hit them over the head with the usage and make them feel like they got caught with their pants down because like they didn't know it was happening. So think about how to empower them with that information and help them solve the problem, as opposed to making them feel like they don't even know what's happening inside their own company. So just earlier sales intervention, even if self-service going great, I think is needed. And then number two, it's all about how you approach that enterprise buyer. So just tread lightly.
I might also argue that any company that is that security conscious and that bothered about this stuff, that doesn't know that so many people are using Miro.com, for example, isn't doing a very good job of kind of tracking the usage that it seems to care so much about. So I don't know, maybe that's just me being spiky
Maybe.
again.
I'll give them benefit of a doubt. Sometimes, like if you have thousands of employees, like things can slip. I appreciate it, but anybody who has that level of concern about security, they just have dealt with other problems in the past where things have
Yeah.
gone really haywire. So it's all historical context, and you're just walking into it without knowing that historical context. So that's like where the big conflict starts to arise.
Be careful and keep an eye out. But if you've got a sales-led organization that is very used to the old-fashioned, let's call it, way of working, like the more traditional sales-led motion, no product-led sales, no product-led growth, the product probably is a little bit shit around the edges as well, so they probably couldn't do it to start with,
A
but
little bit.
like a little un poco. But there's maybe some appetite from somewhere. Maybe someone's read about it, or they've seen some competitors start to move into that space. What are some of the, I guess, signals that a company is ready, or that it's a good idea to even start investigating that this is a thing, and that they shouldn't just stick with the old-fashioned way? Again, I use old-fashioned guardedly, but like that they
Sure.
shouldn't just stick with the way that they're
Traditional
doing
way.
things
How about
already. Yeah,
traditional way?
traditional. There
Yeah,
you go. That sounds
traditional
much
way.
more respectable.
So first of all, if your traditional way is working well for you, and you're hitting all of your quota targets, you're hitting all of your budget numbers, keep going. Like nothing says that you should disrupt yourself and start to introduce additional sources of pipeline or additional sources of revenue. So if your sales outbound and your top-down motion is working wonderfully and you're crushing it, keep going. Nothing needs to be done because you don't need to do PLG. Here's when you need to start thinking about PLG and product-led sales. And there's a couple of issues. You mentioned one of them, competitors. If you have a competitor that's starting to go from the bottoms up and starting to go target users, and you're starting to see in your closed loss deals that you're losing to this competitor, that's your sign number one. Because you are going to be, to some extent, be able to go down market with your sales team, but only to a certain extent until it becomes a no longer profitable deals. And you'll need to leverage PLG and self-serve. You'll need to be able to generate usage first before you can go to and talk to enterprise buyer in order to have a higher close rate and not as big of a close loss ratio against your opportunities. So from that perspective, if you're seeing competitor inch up, then that's your cue that you're going to need to, in order to eliminate them and in order to neutralize them, you're probably going to need to go into PLG. And then number two, I think also, if you feel that your end users employees feel the problem far more acutely than enterprise buyers, then you might want to try PLG. Why do I say that? Because sales usually goes and talk to enterprise buyers, and they're having a really hard time to hook that enterprise buyer on the problem, because the problem is more closely tied to an end user, an employee actually solving it. An enterprise buyer doesn't even understand what the whole fuss is all about. Then you might actually want to go and use those end users and the usage that you'll be able to create in PLG as a way to sell to that enterprise buyer. So if your story doesn't stick very well, because the problem is just not felt by enterprise buyer as much, or it's not traditionally solved by them before, employees is your way into that account, more so than not. But again, I'll repeat it one more time. If your top-down sales tactics are crushing it and you see no other competition and no pressure to go down market, go at it. You don't need PLG. It's just a tactic and a growth strategy that you will need to evaluate at some point, because even though you don't have that down pressure now, you will feel it, because if you leave the bottom of the market open and you don't offer very good self-serve products and usability, intuitiveness uh, in the product sense, then somebody will come in and swoop in. So it's just a question of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, but that's an interesting point. You kind of touched on some of the things that they need to have in place to make it successful as well. So if we're talking prerequisites, like things that you need to have either organizationally or in the product, or people even that you have working with you, or culturally, like whatever it is that you think is like
Yep.
a necessary starting point for you even to have a chance of succeeding down this path.
Right. So let's talk about tactically what is the first step of a sales-led company going into product-led growth. The first step is allowing for self-serve trial, usually, because often it's a paid trial. So there's a higher intent screen for it. And it's a trial, not a freemium, because your product probably doesn't know how to monetize itself yet, because you, sales, have been selling it for however long. So trial just creates a nice time window after which you either need to monetize or you need to churn. And that self-serve trial is the first tactic that most of the companies implement as their way to dip the toe in the water. So what will you need for that trial to be successful? Well, you need somebody on product to make sure that that trial experience is self-servable. Because most of the time, when you have a very strong sales and success team, they kind of put all of the band-aids on product experience that is not self-servable. And product organization is not even incentivized to create a self-serve product, because they have strong sales and success and support team that kind of smooths over the rough edges. However, when you're self-serve, there's nobody that is going to smooth over the edges. So you will need product and engineering squad that is going to work on that trial experience. And it's just not creating features. It's making intuitive user journeys and making sure that the product is able to sell itself through that trial and to convince a customer that they actually need it, which means that they'll be working on very heavy on activation and how to have a successful setup moment, how to have a successful aha moment, how to get people into the habitual loop without human intervention. That's a hard problem to solve for a product that has never needed to solve it before. And then number two team that you're going to need is, how do you acquire people into this trial? Well, maybe you already have a very decent traffic to your homepage or your landing pages to your marketing site. So you can just kind of piggyback on it and direct some of it towards your trials. But a lot of the times you're going to need to invest into some basic um, SEO, SEM, landing page optimization tactics in order to actually get traffic into this trial to even begin with. And then the third group of people that you're going to need is, how do you actually take that self-serve trial usage and convert it to pipeline? It's not as intuitive as a lot of people think. And if you just send every single sign up to sales right away, what ends up happening is sales goes like, what are these garbage leads? I don't have time to deal with it. Like, nobody responds to my emails. Nobody picks up the phone. And they actually stop looking at it as a pipeline channel, or they look at it like a very low intent pipeline channel. And that's because not every single lead should be sent to sales. Not every single sign up should be sent to sales. And you should be really qualifying it in product very carefully, just like you're qualifying MQLs and opportunities. So those are, I think, the three main roles that you need to fulfill. Product, to actually look at the product experience. Marketing, to drive traffic to those trials. And then how do you actually create pipeline on top of those trials?
So I spoke to Aisha Armstrong. I don't know if you know Aisha. She's written a bunch of books about converting professional service organizations into product organizations. And one of the things that she's very keen on in her books, and when I've spoken to her, is this idea that sometimes the people that you have before you start doing this are not the people that you need to do it. Like, you don't have the talent in the organization. Maybe they're kind of wedded to old ways of working, or quote unquote old fashioned. Let's use that word again. But this idea that, like, sometimes you talked about product, you've talked about engineering, you've talked about marketing, and I guess also, like, by extension, sales. That maybe sometimes you're going to need different types of those people
You
with different
do.
skills, different mindsets and such like that. Is that something that you find always happens, or do you sometimes feel that it works by kind of almost crossing over people that already exist in the organization?
So I do think that there is a generation of product managers, marketers, and even sales folks that have worked in the companies that are doing both motions, both self-serve and sales successfully. So I'm talking about Slacks, Figma, Asana, Atlassians of the world. And they're like chameleons. They can do both because they've seen how both of those work. But it's fairly limited set of individuals. And I wouldn't say that their strength is very vertical knowledge in both PLG and sales, but they know the basics and they're able to connect the two motions together, which is very powerful, very, very powerful. However, there's more people that are either really deeply, profoundly knowledgeable in sales-led tactics and have no idea how PLG works, or they've only worked in PLG-only companies and have no idea how sales works. And if you have those types of people, then they definitely cannot make that bridge come together because they're truly specialists in these very specific and siloed growth motions. And you will need to hire from those pools to like create specialization, or you can find those unicorns, chameleons, however, throw an analogy over there, in order to do it. So there do people that exist. I've seen them firsthand. They're very far and few in between, and they usually come from the companies that are able to successfully execute on both motions at the same time. So they're just exposed to all of the learnings from how that works.
So who do you hire first of those different types of people? If you got to put your first chips on the table, like who's the first
Yeah.
person, which vertical, which role?
So I would hire a product manager first, because without self-servable product experience, all of it goes flat. No matter how much acquisition you're going to throw its way, no matter you won't be able to generate any meaningful leads out of it if there's not meaningful product experience. Plus, product experience takes the longest to get right because you need to actually develop it, you need to release it, you need to experiment on it, you need to optimize it, you have to have a bunch of customers interviews. So it just takes more time. To make a product self-serve, it may take company a year to get something right because they've never had that muscle. They might not have even infrastructure to support it. They might not have data to support it. Because remember, the only way that you can do self-serve right and PLG right is with the abundance of data because you no longer have salespeople making decisions with their human minds that are like powerhouses of data aggregation. You now need product itself to give you all of the information so you can make decisions over here. You don't have that one-to-one connection with the customer anymore. So I would throw the resources into R&D first, just to start like with the mission of product has to sell itself. Product has to create its own engagement and retention, and then hire everybody else around it.
Score one for the product managers. But to flip it the other way around, there are some companies out there that start product-led growth. They start looking at the sort of maybe working with smaller businesses, selling to SMBs, and eventually they get a reasonable amount of traction in the bottom end of the market. Let's call it that. Let's be really patronizing, but like the smaller end of the market. And then they're like, right, we want to quote unquote go up market. Like we want to go big now because we've got some traction at the bottom end, but we never really sold to big companies before, or not in a systemic way. They've never done any sales at all. Do you think it's the inevitable end state for those types of PLG companies to eventually turn to the dark side of sales-led growth? Like, is that the ultimate? Like, have you seen many companies not end up eventually trying to go up and sort of get those big ticket sales and try and add some kind of sales motion?
So I think that there's a lot of B2B companies that specifically target freelancers, agencies, let's say solopreneurs, creators that will never need a sales team. There's no such thing as enterprise upmarket for them because they have very specific ICP, ideal customer profile, in mind that never even warrants an interaction with sales. They will never go up. Most of the companies, though, they start with more of an SMB, small businesses, maybe going up mid-market, and eventually they will feel pressure by their board, by their investors, by public market to close those 6 and 7-digit deals in order to get that desirable B2B multiple on their revenue of 10, 15, maybe even higher X, as opposed to being stuck in more of a B2C multiple that is 2, 3, 5, maybe at most 8x of your revenue. So I think the enterprise chase and those enterprise contract chase really ends up being a function of wanting to get a bigger multiple and bigger valuation for your business, which is supported by larger enterprise deals that seem to be more stable and seem to indicate to public market to this day that this is a successful company in B2B space. So I hope this actually changes, in my opinion, like in the future, where not every single company needs to close 6-digit contracts in order to get higher valuations, but this is the reality of the market today.
Well, that's old-fashioned, right? But do you think
Traditional.
Traditional. But do you think, though, that these companies that are going to end up chasing up market and trying to, get some of those big deals and all of the things that's going to involve them being forced to do that they weren't doing originally, like working with procurement and all those types of things, do you think that they've got exactly the same problem that I just mentioned with regards to sales companies trying to implement PLG, in the sense that they just don't have the people that know how to do those things?
So there's a couple of things. First of all, I've seen a bunch of failures of PLG companies trying to layer in sales-led. I've lived through one of those failures at SurveyMonkey. We had extremely successful self-serve product. We have over 500,000 paid subscribers, individual paid subscribers. And we were trying to go up market because we were trying to go public. And we're like, well, we already have 99, 100% penetration into Fortune 500 even. So how hard is it going to be for us to close some of those 6-digit deals?
Famous last words.
Famous last words. Yeah, it was impossible. We couldn't close it at all. We didn't have a problem that our enterprise plan solved. And users were happy. Enterprise buyers are like, what is happening here? I don't understand what's going on. Like, stop bothering me. Everybody seems to be content where they are, because we didn't actually build an enterprise product. We went with our self-serve consumer-ish product and we tried to close enterprise deals with it. It took a lot of work on pricing and packaging. It took a lot of work on product featured list for enterprise buyers. It took a lot of work of rethinking that individual B2B experience and making it more team-based before there was any traction. And by the way, we were late to the game because Qualtrics came in and ate our cake. And they ended up being a $9 billion valuation versus we at SurveyMonkey barely crossed $1.5 billion. Yet we had magnitude more paid customers, much stronger brand, much bigger awareness. I mean, like in all of the categories except those 6-digit deals. So that's the difference. The products were exactly the same at the end of the day. It's just how we sold them and the type of contracts that we've had with our customers. So there's lots of failure modes there. And a lot of PLG companies have a hard time doing that enterprise, and enterprise companies have very hard time doing PLG. The interesting part is that this ends up, the pressure starts to be so high that they start pivoting to one or the other. So I see a lot of PLG companies saying, okay, forget self-serve. Now we all focus on enterprise and just go up market at all costs. And they forget about their self-serve roots. And they don't succeed in enterprise fast enough, and their product-led growth deteriorates completely. And then they sink really hard. And on the other side, I've seen sales-led companies say, oh, we're only doing PLG. And then their sales team goes what the fuck just happened? You're just you just completely abandon us. How are we going to hit our quotas? We're not getting the support that we need. And their enterprise sales start to dip. So the point here that I'm blabbering, but what I'm trying to make is that it's never about a hard pivot. It's not a pendulum that you're trying to swing. You're trying to create a layered cake and slowly go up market if you need to, or slowly introduce down market if you need to, but never let go of what was your core competency, whether it was sales-led or whether it was PLG at the inception, and layer on top of it. And you will need to layer different product experiences, different people, different processes, but don't let go of your root of why you were successful in the first place. It's never about pivoting away from it. It's never to pivot to PLG. It's never to pivot to sales-led. It's always about layering.
Just reminds me of that meme now, something that's on both of our minds with the guy with the 2 buttons. Which one does he get to press? And he starts sweating. It's just it's almost like the warning that you're kind of warning people about there is that there's not just a button that you can push. It's like Spaceballs, the film, like ludicrous speed, go. There's nothing like that. It's like it's a dial, if anything.
That's right. That's right.
Right. So as we come to a close, I've kept you for far too long, and I'm sure you've got lots of other interesting things to be doing, or to try and get with that
I
puzzle.
have a puzzle waiting for me.
Exactly. I'll tell you what, my wife would love to come and get involved in that puzzle. She loves a puzzle. What's on your agenda for 2025? Can we expect some kind of book soon, or have you got some other grand plans? Is it all a secret? Like, what can we expect to see from elenaverna.com in the coming months?
Book? I don't know. I had a lot of people ask me about book. I just don't feel like I'm a book person. So I reserve to change my mind, but no book from me in the near future. I will continue investing in my newsletter. I'm very excited about some other parallel tracks that I want to invest into it. I don't think I'll ever become quite like Lenny, but I think I can challenge him a little bit more. So game on. We'll see,
that
we'll see
gauntlet
what
has
I can.
been thrown down.
Yes. And then I really want to invest into helping more operators transition into solopreneurship without being afraid that they're completely losing income stability or they don't know how to take the first step. So I don't know exactly how that's going to look just yet, but I've already transitioned 30 plus chief level or VP level operators from product marketing and growth into solopreneurship. So I want to see how I can really amplify some of those learnings and help more people take a step out of their shackles.
Nice. No, I think that's a good thing to do. It's like something that I speak to a lot of people when they come to me asking me, "Oh, how do we do?" Because I put an article up a little while back. I did one with Akash as well, talking about kind of the ins and outs of, for example, fractional. And it's just like it's on everyone's lips at the moment, right? But so many people are just scared of it. I think the income kind of stability thing is such an interesting point, though, because like there are so many people getting laid off from big companies. I know people that have been laid off that were at companies for 20 years and they still got laid off, and the company got
Yeah,
acquired and their team got dissolved or whatever. And you
that's
sit there
right.
and you think, well, yeah, sure, okay, fine. Technically speaking, it is still more, fragile, the work that you're getting if you're getting short-term contracts or whatever. But at the same time, these other people are getting screwed just the same as everyone else. So, you just got to prioritize what
They
works
give
for you, I
that
guess.
contract, that piece of paper, too much weight because company
Especially
can
in the
just
US.
tear it up. Yes, company can just tear it up any second. So you have actually like it's a perceived stability. It's just like a false sense of stability. And the moment you start diversifying your career, the more
Yes.
stability you actually have. Because it's not like you'll never have a full-time job again. You can have full-time jobs, like absolutely, but like have other options too that you can lean on, as opposed to stressing about this only one way of employment.
No, 100%. Now, it seems silly to ask this, given that everyone's almost inevitably following you already. But if people do want to come find you after this, talk to you, or become one of your 130,000 followers stalking you, whatever it is that they want to do with their lives, where can they come and find you?
It's my Substack, so it's just elenaverna.com. Fun fact about Substack, I'm not sure if you know it, but if you respond to any of my newsletters, it goes directly to my inbox. So it's a really great way to engage me. So even if you don't know my email, that's the way to reach me. And on LinkedIn, obviously, just engage with me if anything that I post is meaningful. I love interacting with people in comments. I always do. So happy chatting there.
More real life communication, less AI. That's what I say.
That's
I
right.
mean,
That's right.
honestly, it's intolerable. But I'll make sure to link all of that stuff. Maybe even drop a few comments on your post myself, so I can start bothering you in your inbox as well. But in any case, hopefully you'll get a few people. The 2 people that are listening to this that aren't already following you will come over and they'll find you after this and find out more.
That sounds
Elena,
great.
it's been fabulous to chat. I'm glad we could get this sorted out and that you could spare some of your valuable time. Maybe we'll do a live meme off someday if we can work out a way to make that work. I still think there's potential there, but I don't know if it works in an audio medium.
We need
but,
logistics. We need to figure out the logistics.
we need to work it out. We'll try and get it going at a conference at some point or something like that, like a meme wall or something like that. But until then, thanks for coming and thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.